Coming up on today's show, we're going to run through some surprise cut candidates for the Broncos now that the NFL draft is over. Now, I don't want you guys to watch this video and think I want to see these guys get cut. No, that is not the goal of this video at all. But after Justin Simmons was cut kind of out of the blue-ish, I think it's a good reminder that the NFL is a business and you may see one of these guys get the axe before the season starts. Now, I was looking at our YouTube analytics, and I noticed that we have 9 straight videos with over 200 likes. And I went back for the last year or two, and I couldn't find an instance where we had at least 10 straight videos with over 200 likes. So help us make a channel record here of 10 consecutive videos with 200-plus likes by hitting the thumbs up button. Now, let's jump into our first 2 cut candidates. I'm going to combo these 2 because they're both quarterbacks, Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson. After drafting Bo Nix, it is likely that one of these 2 quarterbacks is a lot more, let's say, uncomfortable than they were before the draft. I currently have Bo Nix slated as QB2 at this present moment, but that can obviously change very quickly through OTAs, minicamp, and into training camp. But Denver traded for Zach Wilson, which to me shows they've got some level of interest in him being on the 2024 53-man roster. However, they also gave Jarrett Stidham a pretty nice contract last offseason. So there's a chance they roll with these 3 quarterbacks, but there's a chance they may not, and I'll explain why in a moment. Last year, you can look at the stats between these 2 QBs. I don't think Zach Wilson is a good quarterback at all. I know hindsight's 20/20, but I never liked Zach Wilson coming out of BYU, and I feel like him getting a lifeline to Denver was maybe the best thing to happen to his career, but it's just that, a lifeline. I don't think it's a surefire thing. However, when you look at the contract details, this is why I think there's a chance greater than 0 that one of these 2 guys gets cut. Jarrett Stidham is on the books for a $7 million cap hit, just $2 million dead cap hit, which means the Broncos could save $5 million by moving on from Stidham. Zach Wilson, he has a $2.7 million cap hit. The New York Jets ate a lot of his contract to help get a trade done, which means there is a $0 dead cap hit. So Denver could cut him, and it would cost them no money whatsoever. If the training camp battle shows that Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson are neck and neck for, let's say, the backup role, and Bo Nix has run away with the starting job, I think tie may go to Zach Wilson. $5 million in savings for Jarrett Stidham isn't life-changing money for an NFL owner, especially in August when it's not like you're going to spend that $5 million on some other free agent. But $5 million is more than just nothing, and in fact, it could help for a rollover for 2025 because the Broncos have a $32 million dead cap hit waiting for them because of the Russell Wilson move. So I feel like if Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham are as even as they come all training camp and preseason long, and the Broncos only want to have 2 quarterbacks on their 53-man roster, I could see them going with Zach Wilson over Jarrett Stidham. But again, that would be an absolute last-minute tiebreaker if all else is equal. I don't think they're going to pick the lesser of 2 quarterbacks because one saves them $5 million. I hope not, at least. But will Jarrett Stidham start week 1? Get in the comment section below and let me know yes or no. I feel like Jarrett Stidham is going to be the starter going into training camp, and I don't know if we're going to see enough from Bo Nix to have him take over that starting gig, but there's likely going to be a switch that happens at some point in the season. Third cut candidate is on the defensive line. It is defensive tackle DJ Jones. We've talked about him potentially being cut or traded for a while this offseason. Ultimately, the Broncos stuck with their big man through free agency and the draft, so I wouldn't say he's out of the woods completely yet, but he's definitely looking a lot better than he did a few weeks ago. Now, here's the contract details for DJ Jones. $12.9 million cap hit, but just a $2.9 million dead cap hit. So Denver could save around $9.5-ish million by moving on from DJ Jones, who's in the final year, by the way, of that 3-year, $30 million contract. Now, the funny thing with DJ Jones in my eyes is he's the best interior defensive lineman they have at a position group that was very weak last year. So why would you move on from him? Because he wasn't very good at his job last year, right? You can look at his stats compared to 2022 to 2023, and ultimately it's been a bit of a disappointment from the entire contract setup. But overall, this defensive line is in need of much more revamping than I thought they would do for how poor they were against the run a season ago. And DJ Jones was not the solution. DJ Jones was a part of the problem for why this team could not stop a nosebleed, but he doesn't have anyone behind him that looks to be any much better at the job. So no rookie defensive tackle draft pick in my eyes, I think really helps DJ Jones solidify a roster spot, because had they gone with a defensive tackle some point in the draft, maybe that guy pushes for DJ Jones' starting role, and Denver's like, well, if Jones isn't going to even be a starter for us, we're not going to have a $12 million backup defensive tackle. But the fact that they did not draft a defensive tackle, I think really bodes well for Jones holding on to his roster spot. Now, before we look at the next two cut candidates for the Broncos, if you want to get yourself a Bo Nix jersey, a Broncos New Jersey in general, go to chatsports.com/Nix. We're going to have that jersey for you guys in the comments and description of today's video. You don't want to be the guy at the tailgate with the last year's jersey. Get the brand new jersey. Get the brand new shiny toy and get it at chatsports.com/Nix. All right, moving on to our fourth cut candidate. Let's talk about running back Samaje Perine. So these are surprise cut candidates. So I'm not saying that these guys are shoo-ins to be cuts, but I wouldn't be blown away if Perine was cut, but I definitely wouldn't pencil him in as an obvious cut candidate. Now, the financial background on Perine, $4.5 million cap hit for this year, so pretty low, all things considered, with a $1.5 million dead cap hit. So Denver could save $3 million by moving on from the RB2/3, depending on how training camp goes, with Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin. Last year for the Broncos, 238 rushing yards. He was a much better receiving back for this team. He really showed some value on third down with Russell Wilson checking it down to him. Also really good in picking up blitzers and pass rushers in the pass protection game. And at this moment, I've got Perine as RB3 on this team. But if Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Audric Estime all show great production and just overall great tape throughout training camp and the preseason, wouldn't be surprised if Denver goes, okay, we've got Williams, we've got highlight reel Jaleel. Maybe we just roll with 3 young running backs and save $3 million in the process, especially if Samaje Perine isn't looking like a top 3 back on this team. So if Audric Estime comes into training camp and puts on a masterclass of a performance, and he's already pushing for the backup role, and Jaleel McLaughlin is picking up where he left off, if Denver looks at their next 3 best backs of Estime, McLaughlin, and Perine in no particular order, and they figure all these 3 guys are in a similar bucket, but one of them has a $3 million price savings to their name, wouldn't be blown away if Denver decides, yeah, let's roll with 3 young backs and move on from a near 29-year-old running back who we could save $3 million in the process by moving on from. Fifth and final cut candidate, I hate myself for saying this, but I do have to acknowledge at least the possibility that Tim Patrick could be released by the Broncos. Denver restructured the last year of his contract. That was code for Tim Patrick took a massive pay cut to stay on the team. $7.1 million cap hit, $0 dead cap hit. So there is nothing tying the Broncos to Tim Patrick for the 2024 season, other than the fact that he is the glue guy and a key member of this locker room. But he is coming off back-to-back brutal injuries, an Achilles tear, an ACL tear. Have not seen this man play football since Teddy Bridgewater was slinging the rock. But in that 2021 season, there was a lot to like from Tim Patrick's game, and he showed improvement from the first few years of his NFL career. 53 grabs, 734 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was doing work for that offense over the middle of the field. And when you think about what Bo Nix did so well at Oregon, it wasn't with a down-the-field vertical threat wide receiver, which he did have in Troy Franklin, but it was getting the ball out on time and where it needed to go. And a lot of time, that's what Sean Payton is looking for, and that results in quick throws over the middle of the field. Why do you think Drew Brees and Michael Thomas had such a great connection? Brees was accurate and on time. Thomas is slant boy king, and Sean Payton was asking for that. So I think every single year that Nathaniel Hackett and Sean Payton's 2 seasons as a head coach in Denver, both respective head coaches wanted to get Tim Patrick heavily involved in the offense. Unfortunately, both coaches did not have Tim Patrick's services. So with Jerry Jeudy gone, I do think Tim Patrick, if he's able to come back healthy and not look like a guy who unfortunately has suffered back-to-back brutal season-ending injuries, he's got a pretty good role for him awaiting him in this offense. However, if he comes back and he shows the rust and the fatigue of a player who suffered an ACL and an Achilles tear, and there's $0 attached to the Broncos for him in 2024, wouldn't be blown away if Denver decides to move on. So type 81 in the comment section below if you want to see Tim Patrick make the roster. I'm pulling for the guy. I want him to be on this roster because I still think he's a really good player and just person altogether. So I really want to see this recovery have a great ending to it. But this is a business, and if he's looking like he's lost a step or two and there's $7 million in savings to be had, and if Troy Franklin, Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, and these other young wide receivers are putting together really good days in camp and preseason outings, I don't think it's a 0% chance Denver makes this move. Now, when we look at the 5 players that the Broncos could move on from, I tallied all of their potential cap savings, and it comes out to a little over $27 million, which $27 million isn't going to do you a whole lot in the later stages of the offseason. It's not like there's some, prize pig free agent you want to sign, but it is worth noting that as things stand right now, the Broncos are not in a great spot for the salary cap next year. They're not in the red, but Russell Wilson has the biggest cap hit of any player at $32 million. So if the Denver Broncos were to trim some of these players, they could roll their cap savings over into next year to eat at some of that Russell Wilson dead cap hit, which I think would go a long way. So if these guys are in spots where it's 50-50, it's a coin flip, and the other guy is, 5 times, 6 times cheaper than this guy, I think the Broncos could look at that as a good time to get some rollover money to 2025 to ease in the blow of a huge Russell Wilson $30+ million cap hit awaiting them. All right, that will do it for us on today's show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. If you're still watching, by the way, go on down to the comment section and drop a DEN for me.